I wanted to show you some of the animals we've taken in recently, and they're going to get progressively weirder. We just never know what kind of animals we're going to get in at the rescue. This first one is a Costa Rican black milk snake. These aren't exactly rare, but it is a species that we've never worked with before. One odd thing about them is that they prefer cooler temperatures than the vast majority of reptiles. This next one, not only have we never worked with one, I've never seen one in person. This is an Indian sand boa, and we actually took in 6 of them. If you know what a Kenyan sand boa is, these are in the same family, of course. They're the largest of the sand boas, and these ones are a special coloration called sunset. They have these super odd clubbed tails that are larger than their heads. This acts as a great defense mechanism because a predator is more likely to go after the tail than the head. Their faces are super adorable and derpy, and I wish we could keep one. The next 3 that we got in were all tarantulas. The first one is a Trinidad pink tarantula. The scientific name is Holothele longipes. I thought this tarantula was really beautiful, but a little leggy and fast for my tastes. I like my tarantulas fat and fluffy. Speaking of fat and fluffy, the next tarantula is a Mexican red rump. Their scientific name is Tildocotyle vagans. They're definitely a more furry and sedentary species, which is much more my speed. Now for this last one, you usually don't want to mess with a tarantula's web. But this cage had been overhydrated and it was getting pretty gross. We were also worried about the tarantula because he was in kind of a funky curled up position. But luckily, he's definitely alive. And mad. The species is an Ephobopus murinus, or a skeleton-like tarantula. And they're definitely known for being pretty fast and aggressive, so we're gonna leave him be. Next up, we were super excited to get in these blue death feigning beetles. The person who surrendered them actually called them blueberry beetles, which we thought was really cute. As you can see, they're really good at playing dead, and when you get them wet, they turn a nearly black color. Now this last one is kind of sad, but I decided to include it because it was pretty strange. We were called to the house of someone who passed away, and they ended up having piranhas. They even managed to chew through this bag. Now unfortunately, they had already lost some, and the ones we got were super stressed and didn't survive. We felt really guilty about that, and we're bummed because we'd been looking forward to working with them.
This is Primrose. She's a 2-year-old female green lacerta who was surrendered a few days ago. She hatched with some severe neurological issues that seem to worsen in response to stimulus and stress. When she's given the time and space to calm down, these behaviors do become much less prevalent. At only 9 grams, she's very thin and undersized for her age. Our first few attempts to feed her were unsuccessful. She definitely wants to eat, she just gets a little overexcited, and her lack of coordination makes it hard. Thankfully, we did have success with some small dubia roaches. Once she's rehabilitated, she'll need a special owner who's willing to be patient.
We had a new animal surrendered yesterday, and it's a species we've never worked with before. This is Midori, and she's an Abronia graminia, otherwise known as a Mexican alligator lizard. Abronia graminia are an endangered species. The decline of their population is mostly the result of habitat loss, but illegal trafficking for the pet trade has contributed. Many of the specimens currently in captivity were smuggled into the country illegally. So if you are determined to get one, you definitely need to find a well-known, reputable breeder. Just like chameleons, they do best in tall screen enclosures and should be misted often. And they definitely need a lot of decor that allows them to climb and hide. In the wild, they often live in bromeliads, so that's a great option for bioactive enclosures. This species is so visually striking that many newcomers to reptile keeping develop an interest in them. I looked into getting them myself when I was new to the hobby, but truthfully, they aren't a great match for most beginner keepers. They can be skittish, nippy, and aren't huge fans of being handled. Other than a few missing toes, Midori appears to be in good condition and should be available for adoption after her quarantine period. This week, we took in 2 very interesting species. The first is commonly referred to as a sandfish skink. These lizards have some amazing adaptations. My favorite being that they're able to breathe under the sand using tiny pockets of air. Their special respiratory systems filter out particles that they then expel by sneezing. But truthfully, it's their goofy upturned noses that have won me over. Sadly, I have to encourage you not to run out and buy a sandfish skink. Currently, captive breeding of this species is almost unheard of, so it's hard to source them ethically. This one we've decided to name Palantino. He'll likely be staying with us here at Be Wild, and I'm really looking forward to doing a Zen garden themed enclosure. The second odd species we got in this week was 2 African egg-eating snakes. Like their name suggests, this species doesn't eat rodents, they only eat eggs, and as such, they also don't have any teeth. This little one, who we've called Wingdings, does seem to have one big health issue. This is the right side of his face. The owner wasn't even aware of this injury, so we're not quite sure what happened. While it does appear to have healed up, the eye will likely need to be removed, so we'll be getting him into our vet this week. Here, Nicole is checking for any other potential issues. This is another species that is often purchased wild caught, so they're at a high risk of having parasites. The larger of the 2 snakes we decided to name Helvetica. She appears to be in much better shape and just has a few small scars. A lot of people are attracted to this species because they want a snake that doesn't eat rodents. But these aren't a good choice for beginners because they can be pretty finicky and you need a good source for small eggs. They can and should be purchased captive bred, but of course this means a higher price tag.
Let's go digging for frogs. I know they're not reptiles, but we're amphibian obsessed. So we were pretty excited last week when we had 3 chubby frogs surrendered. Chubby frogs, also known as Asian painted bullfrogs, are related to our native narrow-mouthed toads. Their most defining characteristic is that they look ridiculous. Unfortunately, they do typically burrow during the day, so you can really only enjoy their goofiness at night. Luckily, these 3 came to us in pretty good condition, though one of them was just a little bit undersized. And this one is the chungus of the group. While these frogs are adorable, please keep in mind that the majority of specimens in captivity are wild caught. When purchasing an amphibian, do your best to find a captive breeder, and you'll end up with a happier, healthier frog. Check out our Patreon account for updates on Denali, Albert, Fuji, and our other rescues. We were just sent 2 new animal ambassadors. Pause here and see if you can guess what species they are. If you guessed axolotl, you'd be correct. This is a morphed axolotl, and they were sent to us by Courtney, who runs Salamander with a Sign and morphedaxolotls.com. She does amazing rescue work with morphed axolotls and is dedicated to educating people about them. I'm going to paraphrase her website because it explains it really well. The vast majority of axolotls remain at the larval stage and never progress to become terrestrial salamanders. At around 5 months of age, their thyroid stops sending growth hormones. On the very rare occasion that an axolotl does morph, it's because their thyroid never stops sending those hormones. It's thought that this occurs because years ago, tiger salamander nuclei were implanted into axolotl embryos. This allowed for the creation of the albino axolotl, which didn't previously exist, but it also seems to have led to recessive morphing genes. This is a really complex and interesting topic, so to learn more, I'd highly recommend visiting morphedaxolotls.com. We got them set up in a super simple quarantine enclosure, but soon they'll move into a bioactive paludarium. We're not sure if they're male or female yet, so if you have any suggestions for matching unisex names, leave them in the comments. While we're never happy that an owner has to surrender their pet, there are some species we're excited to work with. This is a chameleon gecko, or a Eurodactylotus. Check out in this clip how Nicole's phone spooks him and he arches up like a cat. Being from New Caledonia, their care is very similar to species like crested geckos and gargoyle geckos. This little guy is already full grown, so you can see they stay pretty small. And unlike other microgeckos, they're pretty handleable. Luckily, Nicole has lots of experience working with this underrated genus. Earlier today, we got in what is possibly the prettiest snake we've ever worked with. This is Chantilly, and she's a white-sided Brooks king snake. This is what a wild-type Brooks king snake looks like.
The white-sided morph is a color variation that was produced and developed in captivity. This morph is also observed in a lot of other different species of colubrids, including rat snakes. In fact, one of our favorite animal ambassadors is a white-sided black rat snake named Ace. Chantilly was a little defensive shortly before we took this video. When I first did her intake, she musked me pretty well. Musking is an effective defense mechanism that releases a nasty smell. She was also striking at the sides of the bin quite a bit. As you can see, once we took her out, she really calmed down and seemed to realize we weren't going to hurt her. Here's Nicole doing a basic intake exam. During these exams, we're looking for a lot of things. We're checking their eyes, mouth, and nostrils. We're looking for mites or small abrasions and feeling down the body for any lumps or abnormalities. Other than being a tad overweight, Chantilly is in excellent condition. She was definitely well loved by her previous owner. We're so excited we get the chance to work with her. To support our rescue, check out the links in our bio.